just to start by saying thanks very much for everybody for coming, for participating. We have an extraordinary lineup of speakers, so I'll be brief and let you listen to the speakers that matter. But yeah, it's amazing to have people. The program that we've put together is just, it's kind of baffling that it's been this good. Also, welcome to attendees. It does make these events are great fun, great collaborative experiences. If you're going to maybe another pharmaceutical industry or something, you know, everyone is under NDA and they're discussing golf. So what happens in this environment is completely different. And honestly, if it's your first time at an event focused on longevity, dive in, find you know, connections, build collaborations. You'd be amazed in a couple of years you could find yourself working in this arguably the most exciting industry of the 21st century. So I won't do the thank yous. I'll do the thank yous Sunday evening if I get to say a few words maybe. I will just mention that the event wouldn't have happened without Aubrey De Grey, and the caliber of the program is thanks to Aubrey, and obviously he's the spiritual head of the event, and so thanks to Aubrey. And I'll just mention as well a thank you to Beatrice. I think everyone knows Beatrice, but by the same level the event wouldn't have happened without Beatrice, so a special thanks there as well. Okay, so like I say, I won't keep it long. I've kind of mentioned this part of it, the science and fun. Yeah, look, the collaborations, the meetings, the people that come in from different professions, I mean, as much as we need scientists and researchers, and of course we do, and they're the athletes, and the rest of us are the, you know, physios and the bag people. But we do need people in areas like marketing. We need to get the message out. We need to tailor it so that it's acceptable to people. And a whole host, obviously, AI in other areas like this as well. But there really isn't a limit on who can become involved in growing what will be the biggest industry, I believe, of the century, or the biggest movement, let's say. And so part of the job, and it is, as I say, an Aubrey-inspired meeting, part of the job is to have fun. And as soon as the talks finish, there's plenty of opportunity for that. We hope we've put together a good 4 nights, a good 4 days of extracurricular activities. So engage and enjoy. I'm just going to touch on a couple of things. I'll speak very briefly about Ireland as a setting for this coming industry. Look, we've been doing this for 30, 40 years in Ireland. We've been bringing global money, largely American money, into the European Union. We're now the only English-speaking member. No dig at any people in particular there, but and yeah, between corporate law, corporate finance, you know, we've become good at it, I guess, over that 30-year period. So within that, the medtech sector is enormous. All the leading pharmaceutical companies have a base here. The research in the universities is top quality. And I swear, I'm not doing this as a sales pitch. You know, I'm a little bit put out by the fact that there isn't more governmental support for this event and associated things. And I have a feeling that they will catch on to this at some point, probably in the next 12 months, and they'll all be here looking for free tickets. But, you know, it is what it is. I still think that the place is situated very nicely for this, you know, exponentially growing industry, and it is growing in exponents. You can feel it taking little explosions after, and each one is a multiple of the previous one. So I would say that to any investors or any people in biotech that are interested, you know, have a look around. The government here are really, really good if you want to start a business. Anything else we can question, but if you want to start a business, they're superb. Honestly, that's where they've put all their eggs into that basket. I mentioned this as well because I have the good pleasure of traveling to conferences, and I was struck by 2 recently. So in the Bahamas and Montenegro, and in both situations, half the government turned up at the conference. You know, so they've obviously cottoned on to this a little bit quicker than the people here, and maybe elsewhere. And literally in Montenegro, I was walking down the road, and honestly, half the government pulled by me in the black Mercs. And in the Bahamas, we had the acting prime minister stood up and gave an exceptionally good speech, and said all the right things to people with money and people with abilities, to take note as well. So I think that there will be a race among countries very soon to become the biotech longevity hub of their region. And yeah, I would suggest to anyone, any Irish person in the room, I'm not sure there's that many, but anyone that's here, I think that we should amplify that message a little bit and get going, because all the infrastructure, the ecosystem is here. Okay, so I wanted to very briefly just talk about the longevity scope, because it would be remiss of me not to thank Matthew Foran. I don't see him, but I wanted to thank Matthew for the partnership we did this morning and the talks they brought in, which of course were extremely high caliber people. But I think it's part of the widening of what this industry is as well, or maybe a convergence. So a convergence between things like wellness and sleep and exercise that we're all very, very familiar with, but is we weren't as familiar 10 or 20 years ago, or we weren't as interested. And it has become, between wearable technology and everything else, it has become an immense fashion that people are looking after themselves much, much better for much, much longer. There's a convergence between that and traditional healthcare. And I think coming into that space pretty rapidly is fundamental aging research. It's the last piece of the puzzle from a psychology perspective, but I think it's beginning to make sense to people. And that's immensely important. And so that's why I'm talking about a convergence of what we're doing now and what we're trying to do. But yeah, I would like to thank, again, I'm not sure Matthew is here, but maybe a quick round of applause for Matthew and his team this morning in Enable Health. Yeah, it was very high caliber, and it also, I think, speaks to that expansion of what these events should do. They should look at ancillary fields and try to build out networks from that. Yeah, I mean, other people are much more qualified to talk about these things, so I won't go into what's coming, but I think there's that notion of tracking your own health and optimizing your own health. And I was the usual P medicine thing, that it is personalized and precision, and also preventive. And I think that's a natural transition. So when people are watching their sleep patterns and their heart rate variability and all of these things, while they're still healthy, they're not going to wait until they get ill before they try some form of intervention. Okay, whether it's running or whether it's supplementation or whether it's something more advanced, they're still primed to remain, physically active and to keep as well as they can. So to me, I think all of these things converge around just the concept of staying well. There is no point at which you do not want to be well. There isn't a date or a time in your life when you would like to be unwell. So if we can wrap that message up and send it out to the masses, and include in that the fact that the really difficult things are still really under-researched. So I'm stealing something here from a guy called David Chalmers, who talks about the hard problems of consciousness and the easy problems of consciousness. And the joke in there is that the easy problems are really hard, and the hard problems are really, really hard. And I think, yeah, all problems related to aging, of course, are difficult. But there are some things that we need to do fundamental research, we need to invest in, or the goal of making substantial progress on staying well for a long time, I think remains distant. And it is actually the most important thing to invest money in, but we're not doing it at the moment. And I think, yeah, we do need to understand, we still need to understand more of the mechanisms, but we also need to invest heavily in the potential interventions. And to be honest with you, I find it's a bizarre world in some respects. So we spend hard to believe amount of money on fighting diseases once they're manifested and titled a disease, and there's obviously nothing wrong with that. But we spend a minuscule amount of money on trying to find out what leads to the disease or what preventive measures we can implement to slow down the acquiring of those diseases. This, if I can understand this, anyone can understand this, It's not that difficult a concept. But because we call it the biology of aging or whatever, we're just not investing enough money in it. So, I'm going to hype up the next speaker a little bit, but I make no apology. So half the people in here, at least, I would think, came into the field by watching or meeting or whatever with Aubrey De Grey. And I think the track record, like if you look at what Aubrey was writing about in the beginning of this century and the industries that have grown up from that, then there's a clear emphasis on doing what's really difficult and what's not going to make money for another 15 years. And then other people can make that money. So he's not financially very, I was going to say astute, but that's mean. He's not financially very greedy, let's say, okay? So he's mission-driven, and that's important because it's very, very easy to take a sideways route here and say, okay, I've made some progress on health and well-being and lifespan, but I see an opportunity to make money, so I'm going to divert my attention away. And that doesn't happen. So I think that's important. I think that the focus on the really difficult challenges of aging is the stuff that we're all in this room, we're going to benefit from. And this is a naked and unabashed call for money. Where else would you spend your money? To me, it's a nonsensical thing. Not saying you shouldn't do other stuff, but a huge portion of your money should be going to aging research because it will come back to bite you, pretty quickly for a lot of us. And I'm sure Aubrey will talk more about this, but just on if you ask someone who are the most important mice in the world, they might go Mickey Mouse or Danger Mouse or Mighty Mouse or someone. But there's a bunch of mice in Syracuse that are undergoing different treatments under what's called the Robust Mouse Rejuvenation Project. And however the treatments, essentially it's interventions that have worked on lifespan and animal models, combining those, up to 4 of them, for some 3, for some 2, and different variations or combinations, to see the additive elements and to draw other kind of inferences from data. And if you explain that to a child, if you say there's this works, and this works, maybe we should try them together. It's a very simple kind of conceptually thing to do, but there's no incentive for a pharmaceutical company to do it because it's a drug for a disease. And it's very difficult for an academic to take that much of a risk to not be published because it's a failure in some way. And also, it's expensive. That's really expensive. To put 1,000 mice through a multi-year trial like this requires is in the millions of dollars. But there should be a second trial immediately. In fact, there should probably be 2 or 3 trials running concurrently. If we spend $250 billion on aging creams, facial creams and stuff like that, $250 billion globally, then it baffles me that we don't spend a few million on this research. So as I say, it's a kind of an unabashed call for funding for Aubrey's endeavors and others in the field as well. I shouldn't be that specific. Anyone that's doing incredible work in this field. And I think, it is the great urgency of now. Give to this, not necessarily only by money, but by effort, by endeavor. At some stage in the future, 2 teenagers are going to have a conversation, and they're going to say, can you believe in the past people just withered and died? Now, when that happens is kind of up to us. It's not like a comet. It doesn't have an arrival date. It's a product of how much we try, how many mistakes we make, how much learning we do, all these other things. That's when it will arrive. And the more of us that do more, the quicker this comes. And just on a final note, there is something about working on creating time, spending your time on creating time, that's very rewarding and makes everything else feel a bit like a waste of time. So the more of you that get involved in whatever way you can, great. I've got 20 seconds left, so I timed this okay. just please enjoy the amazing lineup of speakers we have, scientists and others kind of eminent in their fields, and have a very, very good time. And I'll introduce Aubrey.